Hi, my name's David Ebsworth and I write novels, historical thrillers. But today I'm talking about real history, about how folk in Britain won their political and religious freedoms. Like this. In Britain, rights and freedoms history begins back in the 13th century. King John, the worst of all of England's kings, spent all the country's wealth in useless wars, then tried to make the barons give him more. They rose against him. Then at Runnymede, forced him to sign a statement of their rights. They made him promise that he'd now consult through Parliament, a French and Latin word, instead of simply making more demands. And so we praise this Magna Carta still, the cornerstone of our democracy, though it did little for us common folk. It gave the nobles rights, indeed it did. The rest of us must wait a few years more. And Parliament became a talking shop until 400 years had passed away. In 1642, old Charles I was back making demands to fund more wars, but Parliament refused, and civil war would bleed these islands for the next 9 years. Our Parliament, with Cromwell at its head, defeated Charles and later took his head. No longer quite the talking shop, it seems. In 1688, another king, now James II, driven from his throne, a glorious revolution to be sure. The crown is passed into much safer hands. William of Orange, Dutch, more liberal, depending on your point of view, of course. But suddenly, the Parliament begins to pass new laws protecting common rights. The right to trial, the Habeas Corpus Act, an entire Bill of Rights, a stepping stone. The Toleration Act of 1902 gives all the right to worship as they will. Unless, of course, they're of the Catholic faith. For this will take another 100 years. In fact, not until 1829. And even then, our monarchs not allowed to wed a Catholic. This law only changed 9 years ago, 2013. Meanwhile, what lessons did we learn from World War II? There may be times when nations lose their way, forget to uphold their own people's rights, or choose to stamp those rights into the dust. So Winston Churchill, in his wisdom, said that there should be a court, but Europe-wide, protecting all those hard-fought things we'd won, the European Court of Human Rights. Remember, we were all once separate too. England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales as well, and not so long ago, nations apart, each with our different laws and legal rights until the Act of Union and the rest in 1707, Queen Anne's reign. Which brings me to our women and the vote, a 60-year campaign for equal voice, of protest on the streets and hunger strikes, force-fed in prisons, beaten and abused, our suffragists and suffragettes, until in 1928 that fight was won. Our men and women equal rights to vote for members in our Parliament. That talking shop the barons helped us gain at Runnymede 1,000 years before.